Welcome, dear subscribers and curious listeners of my channel. The world of Harry Potter films is full of secrets, hints, and hidden details that are easy to miss if you just watch without paying attention to what's beneath the surface. Sometimes directors add Easter eggs only true fans of the books will understand, and sometimes the hidden meaning lies in a moment so small that most people overlook it. Today I want to talk about those moments, the details that seem minor but hold far deeper meaning than one might think. Some of them are my personal observations, others are little-known facts that shaped the story, even though they never made it into the films. Enjoy watching and seeing what's usually unseen. Number 1. The family residence, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, opens in an unusually dark tone, with an eerie old house watched over by an elderly Muggle caretaker. He has no idea what's about to happen that night. Soon, intruders enter, not ordinary men, but Voldemort himself, accompanied by his Death Eaters. What is this house? Why did it become the Dark Lord's refuge? The answer lies in the books. It's the Riddle House in the village of Little Hangleton. This was where Tom Riddle's father and grandparents once lived, until the day young Tom returned home and murdered them all. He came back to the place where it all began, where the first blood was spilled. The reason he chose it is symbolic. The cemetery where his father is buried lies just nearby. For his resurrection, Voldemort needed 3 things, Miffy. Your eyes, the bone of his father, the blood of his enemy, and the flesh of his servant. Everything aligned perfectly: the ancestral estate, the isolation, the grave, and the stage for the unholy ritual. That's why the movie begins here. The film never explains it outright, but for a careful viewer, it's a powerful symbol, the birthplace of evil itself. Number 2. The headmaster's cameo. In Order of the Phoenix, there's a brief scene that seems unimportant at first glance. Harry tells Dumbledore about his vision, the attack of Nagini on Arthur Weasley. The headmaster turns toward a portrait and says, "Phineas, I must ask you to look in on your other portrait at Grimmauld Place. For most viewers, it's just a name, but for readers, it's an entire subplot. That portrait belongs to Phineas Nigellus Black, Sirius's great-great-grandfather, and a former headmaster of Hogwarts. That's why his likeness hangs both in Dumbledore's office and at the Black family home." In the books, his role is much larger. Through Phineas, Harry, Ron, and Hermione learn about what's happening at Hogwarts, and Phineas secretly reports their location to Snape. Thanks to those reports, Snape is able to send them the Sword of Gryffindor. None of this appears in the films, which is why many wonder how Snape even managed to find them. The answer hides right here, in that one small portrait cameo from Order of the Phoenix, a blink-and-you'll-miss-it moment containing an entire secret storyline. Number 3. The hypocritical Umbridge. Dolores Umbridge might be the only character audiences hate even more than Voldemort himself, and for good reason. In Deathly Hallows, we see her once again in power, this time with Slytherin's locket, a Horcrux, hanging around her neck. In the film, we're told she took it from Mundungus Fletcher, but the reason she wears it is never explained. Yet in the book, it's far more cynical. Dolores claimed the locket was an heirloom from her pure-blood ancestors, the Selwyn family. She flaunted the letter S on the pendant as proof of her pure bloodline, though in truth she was a half-blood. Yes, part of her heritage was Muggle. The irony runs deep. Umbridge, the head of the Muggle-born Registration Commission, but the woman who persecuted others for their blood, was herself not pure. She accused others of being what she secretly was, a perfect embodiment of hypocrisy, polished cruelty disguised in pink lace. Number 4. Slytherin at its finest. Let's go back to The Prisoner of Azkaban. Fans noticed something strange. The Quidditch match is played not against Slytherin, but against Hufflepuff. Why the change? At first glance, it seems like a creative decision to mix things up, but true fans know it wasn't random. Slytherin simply refused to play because of the weather. The wind was wild, the rain relentless. Conditions that could ruin their chances. To dodge the match without losing face, they claimed their seeker, Draco Malfoy, was still injured from the Hippogriff incident. Perfect excuse. No need to fly in a storm, and they still get to watch Gryffindor suffer from the stands. Even worse, Gryffindor only learned about the switch one day before the game. Captain Wood had been training his team for weeks to face Slytherin, all for nothing. That's pure Slytherin strategy. Less sweat, more advantage. Number 5. Wit and cleverness. And now, a personal favourite, a detail I've never seen anyone else mention. In Deathly Hallows, Part 2, during the Battle of Hogwarts, Professor Flitwick faces off against giants. He casts a spell, and vines burst from the ground, wrapping around one of them. Most viewers think nothing of it, but in the books there's an important fact. Giants are almost immune to magic. Even Hagrid, being half-giant, is highly resistant to spells. Flitwick doesn't try to stun or disarm them directly. Instead, he manipulates the environment, using magic to make the earth itself restrain his foes. He literally bypasses the anti-magic nature of giants. It's a tiny, brilliant touch that only makes sense if you've studied the lore closely. A perfect example of how thoughtful the wizarding world truly is. Not just spectacle, but character in action. The clever professor wins not through power, but through intellect. Number 6, the Deathly Hallows nobody talked about. When Dumbledore left Harry the invisibility cloak, the films treated it like a sentimental heirloom, a keepsake from James Potter. But the books reveal something far more profound. The cloak wasn't an ordinary magical garment. It was one of the 3 Deathly Hallows, the very one created by Death himself. Most cloaks fade or fail over time, their enchantments weakening. But Harry's cloak never loses its power. As Dumbledore writes in The Tales of Beedle the Bard, the youngest brother took his cloak and departed, and he greeted death as an old friend. That same cloak, passed down through generations, finds its way into Harry's hands. Proof that he is the heir of Ignotus Peverell, the youngest of the 3 brothers. The film never shows how perfectly fate ties this together, that by the end of the story, Harry unites all 3 Hallows. He carries the Resurrection Stone hidden in the snitch, wields the Elder Wand in the final duel, and wears the Cloak of Invisibility over his shoulders. Yet he never claims them for power, only for love and protection. Without realizing it, he becomes the true master of death, not by conquering it, but by accepting it. The cloak, often seen as a simple trick of light, is in truth the quiet thread connecting the entire legend, the symbol of mercy, humility, and the kind of strength that never needs to boast. Number 7, the mirror that explains everything. The Mirror of Erised first appeared as a quiet wonder in Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Harry, sitting alone in the cold classroom, whispers, "I can see my parents." It was heartbreaking and beautiful, a boy staring at everything he'd lost. But in the books, that mirror doesn't just vanish after the first year. It reappears in spirit and meaning years later, linking Harry's story to the people who loved him most. Sirius once owned the same mirror, a matching pair he and James Potter used to communicate while apart. It was Sirius's last gift to Harry, though Harry never understood it until it was too late. By the Deathly Hallows, only a shard of that mirror remains. Harry keeps it hidden, seeing sometimes a flash of a bright blue eye. That eye belongs to Aberforth Dumbledore, Albus's brother, who later uses the mirror to rescue Harry, Ron, and Hermione from death at Malfoy Manor. What began as a boy's reflection of longing becomes a lifeline, literally. The mirror's story stretches across generations from James and Sirius to Harry and Aberforth, binding them in memory and love. It isn't just a magical object, it's a symbol of what the series itself is built upon, that those we lose never truly disappear. They watch, they guide, and sometimes, through broken glass, they save us. Number 8. The Gift Nobody Understood. When Dumbledore leaves his final gifts in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, the films brush past them as if they were small details. But in the books, those objects carry the weight of destiny. Each item he chooses is a riddle, a quiet test meant to guide, not instruct. Hermione receives the Tales of Beedle the Bard, a collection of children's stories most grown wizards dismiss as fairy tales. Ron, meanwhile, is given a Deluminator, a small silver device that can capture light. The movies barely touch on these choices, yet they form the backbone of the final story. When Hermione opens her book, she finds a mysterious symbol, a triangle, a circle, and a line. It's Luna Lovegood's father, Xenophilius, who later reveals that it represents the Deathly Hallows. Without that book, Harry would never have understood the Elder Wand, the Resurrection Stone, or the Invisibility Cloak. Dumbledore didn't give her bedtime reading. He gave her the map to the truth. As he once told Harry, "I knew that you would have to be tested, and you have been tested well. The book is the quiet beginning of that test." The films skip that gift, erasing one of Dumbledore's most brilliant acts of foresight. He wasn't just preparing Harry to face Voldemort, he was arming Hermione with knowledge and Ron with loyalty. The Deluminator leads Ron back to his friends when he loses his way. The book leads Hermione to the key that unlocks everything. Together, they are proof that Dumbledore's wisdom worked long after he was gone. His final lesson was hidden in plain sight. Real magic isn't in spells or wands, but in the faith that your friends will find the light and the truth when the time comes. Number 9. The Unsung Hero of the Battle. When the Battle of Hogwarts roared to life, the camera swept over chaos. Spells blazing, giants roaring, walls crumbling. We saw Neville charging, McGonagall commanding, and Molly Weasley striking the final blow. But somewhere in that storm stood a man the films forgot to honor, Horace Slughorn. The same professor who once hid from danger in his own armchair was, in the books, right in the middle of the final fight. He wasn't just there, he was one of the few who dared to face Voldemort himself. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Rowling writes that Slughorn emerged from the castle, dueling Voldemort alongside Kingsley Shacklebolt and Professor McGonagall. The image is astonishing. The cautious collector of connections now battling the most feared wizard in history. This was the man who once told Harry, "You are the chosen one indeed, but greatness can be a burden." Yet in the end, he carried his share of that burden. He didn't hide, didn't flee, didn't pour another glass of mead to wait it out. Instead, he stood shoulder to shoulder with those he once admired from a safe distance. His duel wasn't about victory, it was about redemption. Slughorn spent years living between pride and fear, but in the castle's darkest hour, he chose courage. The films left out that transformation. The moment a man of comfort became a man of conviction, and when the smoke cleared, his absence from the spotlight felt wrong, because heroes don't always wear armor or cast the final spell. Sometimes they're old professors in velvet robes, raising their wands not for glory, but for the school they once called home. Number 10. The True Fate of Pettigrew. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Peter Pettigrew's death happens so quickly on screen that most viewers barely notice it. He lunges forward, there's a struggle, and then he's gone, a minor villain erased in seconds. But in the book, his end is far more haunting. It's one of those quiet moments. J.K. Rowling wrote not for spectacle, but for meaning. It isn't about revenge or violence. It's about consequence. The moment when years of cowardice finally turn inward. When Harry and Ron are captured and locked in the cellar of Malfoy Manor, it's Pettigrew who enters to check on them. The scene is filled with tension. Then Harry says softly, "You owe me, Wormtail." Those words freeze him. For a heartbeat, the man once known as Wormtail hesitates, torn between loyalty to Voldemort and the flicker of guilt that never truly died. Rowling describes it simply. He hesitated, and Harry saw his pale face, his wide, terrified eyes. That hesitation seals his fate. Voldemort's silver hand, given to him in reward for reviving his master, turns on him. It tightens around his throat, acting as Voldemort's will. Rowling writes, the silver fingers were moving, tightening, cutting off his breath. Pettigrew was being strangled by the hand of his own making. There's a grim poetry to it, a man killed by the very gift he once saw as his salvation. His death is both punishment and justice, not from others, but from within the curse of his own servitude. It's easy to dismiss Peter Pettigrew as a coward, a traitor, a pathetic shadow of greater men. But his final moment shows something more complex. He dies not as a villain, but as a man who remembered too late that he once had a choice. The hand of Voldemort doesn't just kill him. It silences the last spark of humanity he dared to feel. In that single, tragic breath, the story reminds us that mercy and guilt are powerful forms of magic too, and sometimes they're fatal. Number 11, the portrait that says more than it seems. During the Battle of Hogwarts, when Professor McGonagall cries, "Hogwarts is threatened! Man the boundaries! Protect us! Do your duty to our school!" The castle comes alive. Armor clanks, statues move, and the portraits on the walls flicker with silent excitement. Among them, one portrait stands out, Phineas Nigellus Black. The films show him only for a heartbeat, his painted eyes watching the chaos unfold. Most viewers miss it, but his presence is deliberate. Phineas was not just another old headmaster. He was a messenger, a spy, and in many ways the school's memory itself. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Phineas's portrait plays a hidden yet crucial role. He travels between two frames, one hanging in Grimmauld Place, the other in Dumbledore's office. "Phineas Nigellus," Snape commands, "tell me where they are." Through the painted man's reluctant reports, Snape learns that Harry and Hermione are camping in the Forest of Dean. It's one of the cleverest uses of portrait magic in the series, transforming art into espionage. What looks like an idle painting in the background is, in truth, an active participant in the war. Phineas's character adds layers to the story's theme of legacy. Even after death, knowledge continues to move, speak, and influence the living. "The wise never truly leave us," Dumbledore once said. And in Hogwarts, that's literal. The portraits of past headmasters whisper advice, argue, and keep watch, blending wisdom and memory into the stone walls of the castle. Phineas, once arrogant and dismissive, becomes an unexpected link between generations, a reluctant servant of a cause greater than his pride. So when his portrait appears during McGonagall's battle preparations, it isn't random, it's poetic. He is there to witness what every teacher hopes for, that their lessons endure long after they are gone. Hogwarts itself breathes through its portraits. And in that brief flash of Phineas Nigellus watching the defense of the school, we see what J.K. Rowling meant all along. Death does not end influence, it only changes its form. Number 12. The Secret of McGonagall's Robes. Minerva McGonagall's emerald green robes were never just part of her uniform. They were a quiet symbol, a personal spell woven into fabric. The films showed her as stern and proud, but they never told us why she always chose that striking shade of green. In the books, this colour carries deep meaning, one tied not to Slytherin, but to ancient magic itself. Green has always been the colour of protection, renewal, and balance between worlds. It's no accident that the woman who balanced two worlds her whole life, witch and muggle-born daughter, wore it every day. Minerva was a Gryffindor through and through, yet her roots told another story. Her mother, Isabel Ross, was a witch who hid her powers from her muggle husband, Reverend Robert McGonagall. The Pottermore biography describes how their marriage was marked by secrecy and sorrow, and young Minerva grew up watching her mother struggle to live between two realities. That pain shaped her. When she later became a professor at Hogwarts, she wore green as a bridge, a quiet tribute to her mother and every woman who had to hide her magic to survive in a world that feared it. In Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, she tells Dolores Umbridge coldly, "I will assist you to the best of my ability, Madam Undersecretary," but her tone is pure defiance. Beneath that discipline burns a heart that never forgot the cost of silence. The emerald robes, shimmering under candlelight, are more than formality. They are armor. They say, "I know who I am and I will never hide it again." Few notice this detail, and yet it's one of the most human touches in her story. Every time McGonagall moved through the great hall, her robes caught the light. A flash of her mother's secret, a reminder of her own strength. In that green shimmer lies a small rebellion, a tribute and a promise that even in a world divided between muggles and wizards, courage can wear any colour. Number 13. Why the Phoenix appears only for Harry. When the Phoenix rises above Hogwarts in The Half-Blood Prince, its crimson and gold wings stretching against the grey sky, most moviegoers simply see a visual metaphor, a poetic farewell to Albus Dumbledore. The image lasts only a few seconds, yet it lingers in memory, silent, solemn, almost divine. But for those who have read the books, this moment holds an entirely different resonance. The bird is not merely a symbol of loss, it is a message, a bridge between two lives bound by fate, magic, and sacrifice. Fawkes, Dumbledore's Phoenix, is more than a loyal companion. He is a thread woven through the entire story of Harry Potter, even when unseen. The first time readers encounter Fawkes in the Chamber of Secrets, he appears at Dumbledore's darkest hour, bursting into flames before Harry's eyes. Moments later, he is reborn from the ashes, weak but alive, a creature defying the laws of mortality. That rebirth is not random. It mirrors Harry's own story, a boy marked by death, but continually reborn through love and courage. When Fawkes's tears heal Harry's basilisk wound in that same book, it is not only an act of magical salvation, it is symbolic of the deeper, mysterious connection between the boy and the Phoenix. Rowling never states it outright, but the reader feels it, as though Fawkes recognizes something in Harry that goes beyond loyalty to Dumbledore. What few notice until much later is that Fawkes is quite literally part of Harry's magic. Ollivander reveals it in The Philosopher's Stone. It is curious that you should be destined for this wand when its brother gave you that scar. The twin wands, one belonging to Harry, the other to Voldemort, share a core, a feather from the same phoenix. That phoenix, we later learn, is Fawkes. In other words, the creature soaring above the school after Dumbledore's death has been part of Harry's destiny since the very beginning. 2 wands, 2 destinies, 2 men bound by a single spark of the same life. That is not coincidence, it is prophecy made physical. From that moment, Fawkes becomes the silent witness of their intertwined fates. He saves Harry in the chamber, helps Dumbledore in the duel against Voldemort in the Ministry, and later, when Dumbledore falls, sings a lament so pure it makes even hardened men weep. Rowling describes it in The Half-Blood Prince. Harry had never heard such a beautiful sound. It was a song of loss and despair, yet it filled the air with the promise of hope. The song is not only for Dumbledore, it is for Harry, the last bearer of that phoenix flame, the one who must now carry what his mentor can no longer bear. It is striking that after Dumbledore's death, Fawkes disappears completely. In the books he never returns. Rowling writes, and Fawkes was gone. Harry knew that he would never see him again. This departure has puzzled many readers. Why would such a loyal creature abandon the fight when darkness still threatens the world? The answer lies in what the phoenix represents. Fawkes is not merely a pet, nor even a magical ally. He is the embodiment of renewal, of the cyclical nature of life, death, and rebirth. His disappearance is the final act of Dumbledore's story and the beginning of Harry's. The phoenix must leave because its spirit now resides symbolically within the one who has to rise next. The connection between Fawkes and Harry becomes clearer when one reflects on the essence of phoenix magic. The bird's tears heal, its song brings courage, and its rebirth defies despair. These are the very qualities that define Harry in the final books. He becomes, in a sense, a human phoenix, continually rising from ashes, from the ruins of Godric's Hollow, from Cedric's death, from Sirius's fall, from the grave of Dumbledore himself. Every time he loses someone, he is reborn through grief, carrying a spark of that same unyielding flame. There is also an ancient symbolism hidden in Rowling's choice of the phoenix as Dumbledore's companion. In alchemy, the phoenix is a sign of the philosopher's stone, the eternal transformation of base into divine. Dumbledore, as we know, studied alchemy with Nicholas Flamel, and his entire life is dedicated to understanding how to transmute pain into wisdom. When he mentors Harry, he passes that lesson on. The death of Dumbledore, followed by the flight of Fawkes, marks the moment when Harry must complete that alchemical cycle alone. The teacher has fallen. The student must now become the fire. It is telling that Voldemort, who shares the other feather of Fawkes, perverts that same power. Where Harry uses his connection to heal and protect, Voldemort uses it to destroy. The shared core between their wands becomes a metaphor for choice, 2 sides of the same flame. In the Goblet of Fire, when their wands meet in priori incantatem, golden fire erupts between them. A narrow beam of light connected the 2 wands, Rowling writes. And in the heart of the beam was a golden thread, trembling, vibrating. That golden thread is Fawkes, the phoenix's essence refusing to let one destroy the other completely. It is as though the bird's spirit itself intervenes, reminding both master and monster that they are 2 echoes of the same creation. Number 14. Neville's triumph that went unnoticed. In Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, long before anyone imagined Neville Longbottom would one day stand before Voldemort, he was the boy who could barely remember where he had left his toad. He was clumsy, forgetful, and constantly mocked by his classmates especially by Draco Malfoy and even, at times, by his own housemates. Yet in that very first book, J.K. Rowling planted the seed of a future hero. When Neville stood up to Harry, Ron, and Hermione to stop them from sneaking out at night, he demonstrated something that Dumbledore later recognized with quiet wisdom. "It takes a great deal of bravery to stand up to our enemies," he said, "but just as much to stand up to our friends." With those words, Neville earned 10 points. For Gryffindor, securing his house the victory. Few noticed it then, but this moment set the pattern for everything that would come after. Neville's courage was not loud or dramatic, it was moral. Years later, when the war against Voldemort reached its climax in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Neville's bravery would no longer be overlooked. Between those two moments, the boy who trembled in his pajamas and the young man who raised the sword of Gryffindor against a serpent born of evil, lay a journey of quiet transformation. Neville's triumph was not sudden. It was earned through years of humiliation, fear, and persistence. While Harry's path was marked by prophecy and fame, Neville's was defined by struggle in the shadows. It is no coincidence that the prophecy about the One with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord could have referred to Neville just as easily as to Harry. The two boys were born within days of each other. Voldemort chose Harry, but as Dumbledore once noted, he chose the boy he thought was most like himself. By that choice, Neville was spared the curse of destiny, but not the burden of courage. As the years went by, the difference between the two boys became a quiet mirror of what bravery truly means. Neville did not have the lightning scar or the special attention. Instead, he faced ridicule from teachers like Professor Snape, who sneered at him in potions and reduced him to trembling fear. When Snape once forced him to test a potion on his beloved toad Trevor, Neville's panic was so overwhelming that Hermione had to step in to help him. Yet, these moments of humiliation only forged his strength. When others learned through praise, Neville learned through endurance. He never quit, even when it seemed he had no talent for magic at all. Professor McGonagall's faith in him, though often expressed with stern patience, became one of the few lights guiding him through his awkward youth. By the order of the Phoenix, Neville's quiet courage began to shine in unmistakable ways. When he joined Dumbledore's army, he was no longer just the boy who lost his toad. He was a young man who wanted to fight back. Harry noticed it when Neville practiced the stunning spell and failed over and over but refused to give up. "He's improving," Harry said, and indeed he was. When the group finally faced real battle in the Department of Mysteries, Neville stood among the few who did not flee. He fought beside Harry, Hermione, Ron, Luna, and Ginny against Death Eaters far more skilled than himself. Even when his wand broke and his nose bled, Neville continued to fight. "I'll join you when hell freezes over," he spat at the enemy. Those words were not heroic in the cinematic sense, but they were real. They were the defiance of someone who had suffered too long to yield now. Neville's story became even more tragic and inspiring when readers learned of his parents. Alice and Frank Longbottom, once brilliant Aurors, were tortured into madness by Bellatrix Lestrange and her followers. When Neville visited them in St. Mungo's Hospital, they did not even recognize him. In one of the most heartbreaking scenes in Order of the Phoenix, his mother gave him a gum wrapper, and he accepted it with trembling hands. "Thanks, Mum," he whispered. That simple act defined Neville's soul better than any duel could. He carried his parents' pain not as shame, but as a silent reason to keep going. He never used their tragedy as an excuse for self-pity. Instead, it became the quiet fuel that pushed him toward the moment when he would finally stand before evil and not flinch. When Hogwarts fell under the control of the Carrows in the Deathly Hallows, Neville emerged as an unexpected leader. The frightened boy from the first book became the backbone of the resistance within the school. He turned the Room of Requirement into a refuge for students who refused to bow to Voldemort's new order. He endured torture and punishment, but kept the spirit of rebellion alive. The thing is, it helps when people stand up to them. It gives everyone hope, he told Harry when they reunited. That line, simple as it is, revealed how much Neville had grown. He understood now that courage wasn't about never being afraid. It was about being afraid and standing anyway. Number 15, The Locked Door in Hogwarts. It was a fleeting moment most viewers missed, buried in the maze of Hogwarts' candlelit corridors. In Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, when Harry sneaks through the castle under the cover of night, his wand trembling with the faint glow of Lumos, he comes upon a door that refuses to open. He tries spells Alohomora, perhaps even a desperate push, but the door remains sealed, unmoved, stubbornly quiet. For moviegoers, it was nothing more than a simple obstacle in the scene's tension. But for readers who knew every brick of Hogwarts, that door was far from ordinary. It was a whisper of something greater, something the books would not reveal until much later, the Room of Requirement. The curious thing about Hogwarts was that it never stopped hiding secrets. Every stair, every portrait seemed alive, ready to shift or move when no one watched. Yet the locked door in the Goblet of Fire was different. It was not mischievous or protective. It was deliberate, as though the castle itself was holding its breath, waiting for someone worthy or desperate enough to discover what lay beyond. Those who read the books remember how J.K. Rowling described the mysterious room in Order of the Phoenix. It is a room that a person can only enter when they have real need of it. Sometimes it is there, sometimes it is not. The clue was always there, hidden in plain sight, 2 books earlier, and the filmmakers, knowingly or not, placed a subtle prophecy in that locked door. When Harry finally encounters the Room of Requirement in Order of the Phoenix, it is because Dobby tells him about a place where one can find whatever one needs. The house elf's innocent description suddenly unlocks a chain of memories, how the castle always seemed to contain more than met the eye, how doors appeared and vanished. The door in Goblet of Fire now gains a haunting new meaning. It wasn't just a random corridor. It was the same stretch of wall on the 7th floor, across from the tapestry of Barnabas the Barmy, where later the DA, the Dumbledore's army, would gather in secret. The same door that refused Harry's wand that night would one day open at his command, forming a sanctuary against tyranny. This deliberate layering of clues is one of the great strengths of the Harry Potter universe. Nothing exists without purpose. Rowling often scattered tiny seeds that would bloom books later, and attentive readers were rewarded with a feeling of revelation. But what makes this instance particularly fascinating is that it crossed mediums. The film adaptation, crafted before Order of the Phoenix was even published, seems to predict the future of the series. Whether it was intentional or a lucky coincidence, the filmmakers created a visual echo of what the books would confirm. A secret room with a mind of its own, silently waiting behind a locked door. In the lore of Hogwarts, doors are never just doors. The entrance to the Chamber of Secrets hides beneath a sink. The Mirror of Erist is discovered behind a heavy wooden panel. And now, in this small, quiet moment of the Goblet of Fire, a closed door foreshadows the most adaptive and mysterious space in the entire castle. For those who looked carefully, Hogwarts itself was a living puzzle. "Help will always be given at Hogwarts to those who ask for it," Dumbledore said once. Perhaps the Room of Requirement was the castle's answer to that promise, a physical embodiment of aid and intent. There is poetic justice in the fact that Harry first encounters the door while wandering alone, confused and searching. In that moment, he has no clear goal, no desperate need. He is simply curious, perhaps lost, and so the door does not open. The Room of Requirement only yields itself to those who know what they need most. Harry's failed attempt was not a denial, but a test. It is as though the castle whispered, "Come back when you're ready." Years later, when Harry would return with a burning sense of purpose, to train others to fight against darkness, the same wall would melt away, offering him the very room he needed. The locked door was never locked at all. It was waiting for meaning. Rowling's narrative mastery often relies on this principle of delayed revelation. Small, insignificant details gain weight when seen in retrospect. The vanishing cabinet first appears in Chamber of Secrets, when Peeves drops it above Filch's office, only to become a crucial tool for Draco Malfoy's betrayal years later. Similarly, the mysterious locket seen in Order of the Phoenix at Grimmauld Place turns out to be one of Voldemort's Horcruxes. The locked door in Goblet of Fire belongs to this same lineage of hidden continuity, quiet details that form invisible threads through time. Thematically, the Room of Requirement represents adaptability and the power of intention. It responds to emotion, not incantation. When Harry later steps inside it with his friends, it transforms into a fully equipped training hall, complete with cushions, targets, and even a whistle on the wall. When Draco Malfoy uses it in Half-Blood Prince, it shifts into a vast, cathedral-like warehouse of forgotten objects. The same room answers two opposite needs, one of hope, one of secrecy. That silent door in Goblet of Fire was therefore not only a narrative hint, but also a symbolic mirror of choice. Hogwarts itself adapts to its students' hearts. Number 16, the mirror prophecy about Snape. There is a quiet moment in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince that most viewers let pass without much thought. Severus Snape stands before a window, his face divided by a beam of light. Half of it glows with the pale shimmer of dawn, while the other half remains swallowed by darkness. It is a fleeting image, almost mundane, but for those who have read the books, for those who understand the war raging inside this man, the scene carries a meaning so deep it feels prophetic. That line of light cutting through his features mirrors the line that runs through his soul, separating love from hatred, loyalty from betrayal, good from evil. Snape's entire life has been defined by duality. The boy who grew up in the shadows of Spinner's End, surrounded by neglect and bitterness, somehow grew to love a girl made of pure light, Lily Evans. That love became his salvation and his curse, his guiding star and his deepest wound. In the books, J.K. Rowling never paints Snape as one-dimensional. He is neither hero nor villain. He is both and neither. His heart beats in contradiction. When he tells Dumbledore the word that has since become immortal, always, it is not a confession of simple love. It is an admission that everything he has ever done, every dark act and every act of courage, has been born of the same conflicted soul, divided between the light and the dark. The films rarely capture this complexity with such clarity, yet that single shot of Snape's half-lit face in The Half-Blood Prince does. The audience sees him framed by the window's faint light, yet the shadows of the room cling to him like old sins. His eyes, reflecting the glow, are tired and watchful. His mouth, caught between contempt and grief, never moves. It is a portrait of contradiction. and it tells a story the script never says aloud. That beam of light is Lily's memory. The shadow is everything he became after losing her. Readers remember the scene in the book where Harry spies on Snape and Dumbledore, hearing Snape's bitter words. "You take a great deal for granted, Dumbledore. Perhaps I have changed my mind." That same tension fills this cinematic moment. Snape is at war with himself, haunted by promises he can neither keep nor break. He is the man of the in-between, trusted by no one, understood by fewer. Even Dumbledore, the one person who sees his worth, uses that brokenness for a greater plan. Rowling once wrote that Snape was the bravest man Harry ever knew. But his bravery is not the shining kind. It is quiet, secret, the kind that festers beneath layers of guilt and resentment. The light on his face does not cleanse him. It exposes the cracks. Each line in that light feels like a scar left by choices he cannot undo. In the world of Harry Potter, visual symbols often whisper the truth long before words do, and Snape's face in that moment whispers of a man already standing between redemption and damnation. The visual metaphor deepens when one remembers his full name: Severus Snape. Severus, derived from Latin, means stern, severe, even harsh. His very name suggests discipline and darkness. Yet the name Snape carries a softness, almost an onomatopoeic sigh, as if the universe gave him both sharpness and surrender. That duality comes alive in the light's split on his face. The cinematographer might have simply wanted to dramatize a shot, but in doing so, they mirrored the moral architecture of Snape's character. The light is not a spotlight of purity. It does not absolve him. It simply acknowledges that despite all he has done, there remains a part of him untouched by darkness, the part that still loves Lily. Book readers recognize another parallel. In the Deathly Hallows, when Harry witnesses Snape's memories, there is a passage describing a similar play of light. A green and silver glow filled the room. Snape's face was strangely illuminated, every line harsh in the light. The pattern repeats, illumination exposing what he hides. Light, in Rowling's world, is never just brightness. It is truth, and truth burns. The film's half-shadowed Snape foreshadows that final revelation, a man whose every lie, every cruel word, every killing curse was cast in the service of love. For those who have never opened the books, the window scene is atmospheric, maybe even forgettable. But for the readers, it becomes a mirror prophecy, one that predicts the emotional symmetry of Snape's life. The man who begins in darkness will die in a flicker of light. When he collapses in the boathouse, Nagini's venom spreading through his veins, it is the moonlight that finds him. Even in death, half his face glows pale and soft, while the rest sinks into shadow. The same imagery returns, closing the circle. He began divided and he ends divided, but this time the viewer understands the light has finally won. That is why his last words to Harry, "Look at me," are not merely about seeing Lily's eyes. They are an act of stepping into the light. For one fleeting moment, he wants to be seen not as a spy or murderer, but as a man. The symbolism of light and shadow reaches its climax here, a visual and emotional echo of that earlier moment at the window. The prophecy hidden in that silent frame fulfills itself. The man who once stood between two worlds will finally cross over to the side of truth. There is another subtle detail from the books that deepens this imagery. Dumbledore tells Snape, "You know, I sometimes think we sought too soon." In that sentence, he implies that Snape, placed in Slytherin for his ambition and cunning, might have been destined for Gryffindor. for courage. The visual split of light and darkness can also be seen as a symbolic sorting hat moment that never ends. Snape lives his entire life straddling that invisible line between the two houses, between cowardice and bravery, between cruelty and compassion. The window light divides him exactly as Hogwarts did. Snape's relationship with the two guiding forces of the series, Dumbledore and Voldemort, also mirrors that light-shadow composition. Dumbledore, a man of secrets himself, represents the light that never fully trusts. Voldemort, the embodiment of darkness, represents the shadow that demands loyalty without love. Snape belongs to neither, yet serves both. His half-lit face in that scene becomes the visual contract between them, Dumbledore's silent watcher and Voldemort's loyal servant, coexisting in one broken human being. Even his classroom at Hogwarts echoes this visual tension. The dungeons are filled with flickering candlelight, where shadows dance across his face as he moves between cauldrons. He is a man of potions, of mixtures, of transformations, of things that are never simply one thing. Every potion he brews is a metaphor for himself, unstable, precise, dangerous, and beautiful. The same duality that defines his moral life defines his art. And that, perhaps, is why the filmmakers chose to frame him by a window, the perfect alchemical image of light merging with shadow. For readers, the word always is not just a declaration of love, it is the key to understanding that scene. When Dumbledore asks after all this time, and Snape answers, always, he affirms that his love, though buried in darkness, has never died. That word becomes the spark of light cutting through years of deceit. Watching the Half-Blood Prince after reading that passage gives new weight to the window moment. The light across his face is that always. It is the sliver of goodness he carries, even when his deeds suggest otherwise. Another layer of meaning emerges when one recalls that Snape is the Half-Blood Prince himself. The title is more than a name. It is a statement of identity. Half-blood, half one thing, half another. Even his chosen title mirrors the visual duality that defines him. In that shot, the half in shadow belongs to the prince, the proud, sarcastic, defensive man shaped by bitterness. The half in light belongs to the half-blood, the human, the vulnerable boy who loved Lily. The two halves coexist, eternally at war, eternally inseparable. The genius of that small cinematic detail is that it silently prepares the audience for Snape's redemption long before they know the truth. Without saying a word, it foreshadows that the man they distrust most will be the one who saves them all. It is the same kind of hidden clue Rowling planted throughout her books. Small, almost invisible gestures that only reveal their meaning once the story is complete. When readers rewatch that scene, they no longer see just a teacher standing by a window. They see a prophecy fulfilled in silence. It is easy to forget how deliberate these visual metaphors are. David Yates, the director, often used light to tell moral truths in The Half-Blood Prince. In the same film, Harry and Dumbledore's scenes in the cave are drenched in darkness, broken only by flashes of cursed fire, a mirror to the moral fire that consumes Snape's life. Yet only Snape's light is calm, static, almost sacred. It doesn't flicker, it divides, it waits, it speaks for him when he cannot speak for himself. The books give him words, the films give him imagery. Together they tell one story, that goodness can exist in those we misunderstand, that love can survive even in the heart of darkness. The beam of light on Snape's face is not there to absolve him. It is there to reveal him. Those who have read the books know it immediately. that light is Lily's. It has followed him all his life, from the moment she first said his name to the moment Harry forgave him. It is the light that never left him, even when he no longer believed he deserved it. Number 17. The symbolism of the Hogwarts Express. When Harry Potter first steps through the barrier between platforms 9 and 10 at King's Cross Station, he is not merely boarding a train, he is crossing a threshold between two realities. The Hogwarts Express is introduced in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone as a vivid red locomotive that seems both ordinary and extraordinary at once. To the Muggle eye, the station is a busy, noisy London hub. But to those who know where to look, a hidden passage leads to a platform that defies logic. Rowling's decision to locate this entry point in King's Cross is not accidental. Every time Harry boards or leaves this train, he is symbolically choosing between worlds: the mundane and the magical, the living and the unknown. Throughout the series, the train becomes a recurring image of transition. In the first book, when Hagrid guides Harry through the wizarding world for the first time, the journey ends at King's Cross. It is where Harry must say goodbye to the only life he's known and step, for the first time, into something extraordinary. Rowling describes the moment with striking simplicity. A scarlet steam engine was waiting next to a platform packed with people. But behind this image lies something deeper. Steam, smoke, movement, and the call of the whistle all suggest initiation, as if Harry is entering a rite of passage. Once he crosses that barrier, he can never truly return to being just the boy under the stairs. The symbolism continues in every book. The Hogwarts Express always carries students from the human world into the realm of magic and back again. It's a physical representation of the line between childhood and adulthood, innocence and knowledge. The train departs precisely at 11 o'clock, an hour that rests between morning and noon, a midpoint, neither one thing nor the other. Rowling's choice of details reinforces this theme of in-betweenness. Even the way the train moves, steadily, rhythmically, pulling students toward the Scottish Highlands, echoes the rhythm of time itself, the unstoppable forward movement toward destiny. In the Chamber of Secrets, when Harry and Ron miss the train and instead take the flying Ford Anglia, the consequences are immediate and chaotic. They bypass the proper crossing between worlds, attempting to reach the magical realm by force. Their reckless journey ends with them crashing into the Whomping Willow, a violent reminder that entry into magic requires ritual and respect. The train is the sanctioned path, the sacred threshold. Missing it disturbs the order, just as breaking the rules of life and death later proves dangerous for Voldemort himself. Rowling's structure mirrors myth. There is always a gate, a guide, and a rule that must be followed to cross safely. King's Cross Station, however, is more than just a departure point. Its very name holds spiritual undertones. King's Cross, literally the King's Cross or the Cross of the King, evokes imagery of sacrifice and resurrection. It is not by coincidence that at the end of the Deathly Hallows, Harry finds himself once again in a version of King's Cross after willingly offering himself to death. There in that white, misty hall, he meets Albus Dumbledore, or perhaps the echo of him, and learns the final truth about his own soul. The choice he faces there mirrors the one he made as a child, to go forward or return. The place where his life in the magical world began is also the place where he decides whether it will end. Rowling describes the afterlife scene with unsettling serenity. He was lying in what looked like a deserted King's Cross station. The floor gleamed white, the walls were misty and indistinct, and somewhere a high, clear voice was calling. The familiar setting is stripped of its physical details, yet it retains its identity. It is not just a memory, but a metaphysical representation of passage, the place where the living meet the dead, where the journey begins anew. Harry's encounter with Dumbledore in this otherworldly station is the culmination of the train's symbolism throughout the saga. It is no longer a physical vehicle, but a spiritual one. Each journey on the Hogwarts Express parallels Harry's personal growth. In The Prisoner of Azkaban, the train introduces the Dementors, creatures that bring with them a cold reminiscent of the chill of the grave. The train halts, lights dim, and time seems suspended. Harry faints, a symbolic death. When he awakens, the presence of Professor Lupin and the warm chocolate he offers mark a symbolic resurrection. This cycle repeats across the series. Every September 1st, Harry dies to his ordinary life and is reborn into the magical one. By the 7th book, the metaphor becomes literal. The station is the final frontier between existence and eternity. The station's architecture itself hints at duality. The number 9 3/4, an impossible fraction, is a riddle disguised as arithmetic. It sits between two whole numbers belonging fully to neither. Rowling could have chosen any platform, but she selected one that mathematically represents the in-between. That choice turns an ordinary train platform into a symbol of liminality, a space where two realities overlap. When Harry runs through the barrier, he doesn't simply disappear, he passes into another state of being. The act resembles death, yet it leads to life. The repetition of train scenes across the series subtly reinforces the idea of cycles. Every academic year begins and ends on the platform, suggesting that time in Harry's world is circular rather than linear. He departs, learns, returns, always changed, always older. The red steam engine becomes a timekeeper of childhood, a reminder that endings are just beginnings in disguise. When we watch the last scene of the Deathly Hallows, Part 2, where Harry sends his own son off to Hogwarts, the circle closes completely. The whistle of the train echoes the one that once carried him away, a sound that now belongs to another generation. Rowling's choice to end where she began echoes the oldest narrative structures in mythology. Heroes often return to the place of origin to complete their journey. Odysseus returns to Ithaca. Frodo sails from the same shores he once left. Harry's King's Cross serves the same function. It is both departure and arrival, the end of one story and the beginning of another. The scar had not pained Harry for 19 years. All was well, Rowling writes, but beneath that calm closure is the same symbol that started everything, the train that waits, patient and eternal. What makes the symbolism so powerful is its subtlety. Most moviegoers notice the train as a charming element, a visual motif of school nostalgia, yet readers of the book sense its deeper resonance. The station scene in the afterlife is not an invention of chance, it is the natural conclusion of a symbol that has been present from the first page. King's Cross is the meeting point of all Harry's lives. The neglected boy, the chosen one, the man who must face death without fear. Every crossing of that barrier prepares him for the ultimate one. The connection between King's Cross and the theme of salvation is also striking when viewed through Dumbledore's guidance. In the afterlife, Dumbledore tells Harry, "Do not pity the dead, Harry. Pity the living, and above all, those who live without love." It is the same lesson he has been teaching since their first meeting, that the real magic lies in love, not power. And where does this truth reveal itself? On the same station platform where Harry first learned who he truly was. In essence, King's Cross becomes a chapel, a sacred space where revelation occurs. Even the mechanical nature of the train with its iron and steam carries allegorical meaning. In a world filled with wands and flying creatures, the train remains stubbornly Muggle, an industrial machine. This mixture of the ordinary and the magical reinforces Rowling's central theme that the two worlds are not separate, but intertwined. The barrier between them is only visible to those who believe. The train's whistle, the rush of smoke, the wheels clattering on the tracks. They all remind us that the magical world does not exist apart from ours, it hides within it. Perhaps this is why, at the end, when Harry wakes from his death and chooses to return, the setting is King's Cross, the same place he once used to escape reality. Now he uses it to re-enter it. The boy who once fled into magic returns as a man ready to face the real world. The sacred journey is complete. The circle that began with a train whistle ends with the same sound, carrying within it everything Harry has learned about courage, sacrifice, and love. For readers who look closely, the train is not a background detail but the series' most consistent metaphor. Every crossing, every whistle, every puff of steam whispers the same message: life and death, magic and reality, departure and return, all a part of the same journey. King's Cross is not merely a station in London, it is, as its name quietly suggests, the Cross of the King, and the point where all paths meet, and where every traveller must choose their direction. In that silent, gleaming platform, Rowling hides the heart of her entire saga, the belief that even in death there is a train waiting to take us home. Number 18. The hidden meaning of Draco Malfoy's wand. When Voldemort raises Draco Malfoy's wand in the final confrontation, the moment passes quickly on screen. Just another dark visual flourish amid the chaos of battle. Yet for those who have read the books, this brief action carries a deep symbolic meaning that threads through the very heart of J.K. Rowling's mythology. The wand is not just an object, it is a vessel of destiny. Made of hawthorn wood and paired with a unicorn hair core, Draco's wand embodies contradiction, the power to destroy and the power to heal. It is the same contradiction that defines both Draco and Voldemort, though in entirely different ways. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, when Harry explains to Ron and Hermione how the Elder Wand's allegiance changes hands, he indirectly reveals the importance of every wand's loyalty. But before the Elder Wand becomes the focus, there is another, quieter lesson in the narrative, the strange fate of Draco's wand. When Harry disarms Draco at Malfoy Manor, the victory is not simply physical, it transfers ownership. The wand chooses its true master, even if neither of them realizes it at the time. From that moment, the Hawthorn wand, torn from Draco's reluctant hand, recognizes Harry as its rightful owner. This subtle detail is what later seals Voldemort's defeat. Hawthorn wood is rare in wand-making, and Rowling herself once described it as a material for complex and conflicted wizards. In Pottermore, she wrote that hawthorn wands may be particularly suited to healers, but they are also adept at curses. This duality reflects the very essence of Draco's inner struggle. Throughout the series, Draco oscillates between fear and pride, cruelty and compassion. His wand mirrors that instability, its magic equally capable of harm and protection. When Voldemort seizes it, he wields an instrument whose very nature rebels against one-sided evil. The wand of Hawthorn resists the one who knows nothing of mercy. The moment Voldemort takes Draco's wand happens in the Deathly Hallows, when he realizes his U-wand cannot kill Harry. He turns to the wand of the boy he once used as a pawn, believing another's tool will solve his own failure. "I shall borrow yours, Lucius," he says coldly. But when that wand proves ineffective, he takes Draco's instead. To Voldemort, a wand is only an implement, a weapon to command. To the reader, however, this decision reveals his tragic misunderstanding of the magical world's most intimate rule. A wand is not mastered through force, but through understanding. His arrogance blinds him to the symbolic truth embedded in Draco's wand. The hawthorn tree holds an ancient reputation in folklore. In Celtic and medieval traditions, it was believed to stand on the threshold between life and death. Its blossoms were used in healing potions, yet its thorns were said to draw blood from those who disturbed sacred ground. The hawthorn marks the crossroads of opposites, light and darkness, renewal and decay. When Voldemort wields such a wand, he unknowingly takes into his hand the very emblem of the boundary he seeks to erase, the divide between mortality and immortality. His quest to conquer death meets poetic irony in the object he chooses, a wand that exists to remind him that life and death cannot be separated. Draco, too, lives within that borderland. He is never wholly cruel nor wholly kind. During the events of Half-Blood Prince, his trembling hands, his failed attempts to kill Dumbledore, and his tears in the bathroom all expose a boy trapped between duty and conscience. The hawthorn wand serves as a silent witness to his torment. When he lowers it before Dumbledore on the astronomy tower, the wand almost seems to hesitate with him. "You are not a killer, Draco," Dumbledore says, and the wand remains unused. The hawthorn, the tree of uncertain hearts, refuses to seal a fate built on fear. Later, when Harry takes that same wand from Draco in Deathly Hallows, the transference feels almost like a spiritual exchange. Draco loses the instrument of his divided soul, and Harry gains one that harmonizes destruction and compassion, qualities he has learned to balance. That act of disarming at Malfoy Manor becomes a quiet echo of everything Dumbledore tried to teach, that mastery lies not in domination, but in empathy. The hawthorn wand, shifting allegiance, embodies the triumph of inner integrity over external power. When Voldemort stands in the forest facing Harry for what he believes will be the final strike, the narrative folds in upon itself. The Dark Lord, who has split his soul to conquer death, lifts a wand crafted from a tree, symbolizing the very threshold between the worlds. The irony is profound. The hawthorn, sacred to ancient healers, refuses to aid the destroyer. "Avada Kedavra!" he screams, yet the spell rebounds as if the wand itself rejects his will. The text makes this defiance explicit. In Deathly Hallows, Rowling writes, Voldemort's own spell rebounded upon him, and he was dead before he hit the floor. The hawthorn wand, faithful to its new master's magic, Harry's, completes the prophecy that power built on domination must collapse under its own weight. This act is more than narrative justice. It is the final revelation of wand law as moral philosophy. In Rowling's world, wands are mirrors of their masters' souls. The hawthorn wand's rebellion against Voldemort mirrors Draco's quiet rebellion against darkness. It also echoes Snape's double life, another man standing between two allegiances, love and hatred. Through these reflections, Rowling suggests that no magic, however dark, can fully suppress the remnants of conscience that survive in the living world. The wand's failure is not a random twist of fate, but an expression of the moral structure underlying her entire universe. There is another layer of meaning in the wand's unicorn hair core. Unicorns, as described in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, represent purity and innocence. Wands made with unicorn hair are known for producing consistent magic, but are the most faithful of all. Yet Voldemort is the antithesis of faithfulness. He betrays followers, mutilates his soul, and even murders the creatures whose purity he cannot comprehend. When he takes into his grasp a wand bound to a unicorn's essence, he touches the very opposite of himself. The inevitable failure is thus written into the nature of the materials. The hawthorn's balance and the unicorn's loyalty refuse the master who honors neither. In this sense, the wand acts almost as a moral compass within the story. When used by Draco, it mirrors indecision. When wielded by Harry, it aligns with courage and restraint. When forced into Voldemort's grip, it turns against him. The wand's behavior reveals that Rowling's world is not ruled by chance, but by spiritual coherence. The objects themselves remember who their masters are. As Ollivander tells Harry in The Sorcerer's Stone, the wand chooses the wizard, Mr. Potter. What Voldemort never grasps is that the choice is sacred. It cannot be stolen or manipulated. He breaks every natural law in his pursuit of immortality, and thus even Wood and Core rebel against him. There is a certain poetic symmetry to the fact that Draco's wand becomes the tool of Voldemort's destruction. The boy who once served the Dark Lord unwillingly provides, through his loss, the instrument of justice. It is as if the hawthorn itself intervenes, balancing the scales. In mythology, hawthorn is often planted at crossroads to ward off evil spirits. In Rowling's fiction, it stands symbolically at the crossroads of fate. Voldemort's end, therefore, is not just a battle won, but a restoration of moral order. The wand that belonged to the hesitant boy becomes the undoing of the man who felt no hesitation at all. For readers who have only seen the films, this dimension may remain invisible. The movie treats the exchange of wands as a mechanical necessity, a plot device to explain Voldemort's failure. But in the books, every wand is a character in its own right. The Hawthorn wand, in particular, functions as a silent prophet. Its material origin, magical core, and changing loyalty form a complete arc of transformation, from fear to compassion, from coercion to harmony. By the time Harry faces Voldemort in the Great Hall, the wand's refusal is not an accident, but the final expression of everything the story has taught about love, power, and choice. Even after Voldemort's death, the symbolism lingers. Harry, standing over his fallen enemy, decides to return the Elder Wand to Dumbledore's tomb, breaking the cycle of possession and violence. Yet he keeps Draco's wand for a time, using it to mend his own. In doing so, he literally channels the magic of reconciliation through the wand that once belonged to a boy trapped by his family's sins. This act closes the circle of Hawthorne's meaning, destruction transformed into healing. The Tree of Opposites fulfills its mythic purpose. Through this single detail, Rowling compresses her grand moral allegory into one gesture. The Hawthorn wand, placed in the hands of those who seek to control it, becomes an agent of fate, reminding the reader that true mastery cannot be achieved by tyranny or fear. The films may show light and color, but only the books whisper the secret beneath the surface. The power that stems from another's will is destined to collapse. Voldemort's failure was written long before his final duel, etched into the grain of the wand he never understood. For those who read closely, the Hawthorn branch in Draco Malfoy's grasp was never just a wand, it was destiny disguised as wood. Number 19, Gringotts and its Secret Philosophy. In the glittering halls of Gringotts, marble columns rise like ancient trees, and beneath their cold glow, goblins move in silence that feels older than any human kingdom. To most viewers of the films, this place is nothing more than a wizarding bank, a fortress of gold guarded by sneering creatures with long fingers and sharper tempers. But for those who have read J.K. Rowling's books closely, Gringotts is not just a vault for treasure. It is a temple of a forgotten philosophy, one that reveals how deeply different goblin magic truly is from human magic, and how the very idea of ownership takes on a spiritual meaning in their world. When Harry first enters Gringotts in the Sorcerer's Stone, the scene seems straightforward. Hagrid shows his key, the goblins check credentials, and a cart rushes them down through the tunnels toward Vault 687. Yet the book subtly hints that something sacred underlies every movement of these small, sharp-eyed beings. Rowling writes that goblins guarded the wizarding world's gold with jealous efficiency, and that they viewed their work not merely as business, but as custodianship. Their relationship with the treasures they protect is one of reverence. Each vault, in their eyes, is not just a deposit of wealth, it is a sealed promise, a contract with the past. Human wizards never understood that philosophy. To goblins, every crafted object carries the essence of its maker. The sword of Gryffindor, the goblin-made blade that appears again and again through the saga, is the clearest example. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Griphook, the goblin who helps Harry, states bluntly, "That sword was made by Ragnarok the First, and it belongs to the goblins." When Hermione tries to protest that it was given to Godric Gryffindor, Griphook answers coldly, "The goblin's view is that the maker of any object is its true owner. It is not greed that drives this belief, but a sacred principle, creation as an act of power that binds the object to its creator forever." This way of thinking puts goblins at odds with the very foundation of wizarding society. Wizards trade, sell, and inherit objects as symbols of wealth or lineage. Goblins, in contrast, see such behavior as theft cloaked in custom. Every wizard who buys a goblin-made item is, from their perspective, merely borrowing it. When wizards die and pass those items on to their descendants, goblins see the act as spiritual corruption, a violation of the balance between maker and magic. This cultural fracture, never shown in the films, forms the philosophical heart of Gringotts itself, a place where humans believe they are masters of their gold, but where goblins quietly know that nothing inside truly belongs to them. Rowling subtly weaves this tension into the climactic moments of Deathly Hallows. When Harry, Ron, and Hermione break into Gringotts disguised by Polyjuice Potion, the scene is not only thrilling, but profoundly symbolic. They descend into the depths of the bank, past layers of security spells that test their strength and courage, and at every level they defy goblin laws of ownership. The trio believes they are stealing back a Horcrux hidden in Bellatrix Lestrange's vault, the Hufflepuff Cup. But to the goblins, their intrusion is not theft of gold, it is sacrilege. They are violating the sacred order of magic itself. The dragon chained beneath the bank's floors embodies that blasphemy. Its blindness and torment mirror how humans, blind to goblin philosophy, enslave forces they do not understand. When the dragon breaks free in a storm of fire and metal, it is not merely a means of escape for the trio, it is a symbolic judgment. The creature, bound for generations beneath the earth to protect treasure it could never own, becomes the fury of the goblins made manifest. The flames that devour Gringotts' lower chambers cleanse the vaults of stolen sanctity. Griphook's betrayal of Harry afterward is therefore not an act of treachery, but of faith. He helps them reach the Lestrange vault only because he demands the return of the sword of Gryffindor, which he believes rightfully belongs to his kind. When Harry tries to reason that he needs the sword to destroy Horcruxes, Griphook sees only another human justification for theft. His cold smile when he seizes the sword is the smile of someone who believes justice has finally been restored. For readers who understand goblin philosophy, his act carries a tragic weight. It is not about greed, but about spiritual retribution. This difference in worldview also explains why goblin magic feels older, deeper, and somehow untranslatable to human wizards. In the books, Rowling hints that goblin-forged metals absorb what strengthens them. The sword of Gryffindor takes in that which makes it stronger, explaining how it becomes imbued with basilisk venom after Harry kills the serpent in the Chamber of Secrets. This property is not a spell but a manifestation of goblin belief. That creation lives and evolves with purpose. Goblin magic does not rely on incantations, it relies on intention. Every stroke of metal and rune is a prayer to continuity. That is why Gringotts is not just a bank, but a sanctuary. Beneath its labyrinth of tunnels lies the collective will of goblin kind, their ancient magic intertwined with stone, metal, and oath. Each vault door is more than a security measure. It is an enchanted covenant. When the text describes vaults that seal themselves if the wrong person touches them, it reflects their spiritual principle that no outsider can command what he did not create. To open such a door by force, as Harry does, is to break a divine boundary. Even the very architecture of Gringotts speaks this philosophy. The twisting tracks, the endless descent, the echoing chambers, all evoke a journey into the underworld, not just geographically but morally. The deeper one goes, the closer one comes to the raw power of creation and ownership. In mythic terms, Gringotts is the realm of Hades, guarded not by demons, but by keepers of balance. The goblins, with their sharp gazes and meticulous records, are not bankers. They are priests of property, defending the sacred law that creation and possession cannot be separated. When we consider that one of Voldemort's Horcruxes, the Hufflepuff Cup, was hidden in Gringotts, the symbolism becomes chillingly perfect. A Horcrux is a perversion of creation, a piece of soul forced into an object through murder. It is ownership of the darkest kind, an attempt to make life itself the property of one's will. Hiding such a thing within the Goblin's sanctum is not coincidence but poetic irony. Voldemort's crime mirrors humanity's arrogance to control what should never be owned. Thus, when Harry and his friends steal the cup, they unknowingly replay the very sin that created it, the violation of a sacred law of creation. The Goblin's rage, then, is not merely about broken trust. It is an ancestral echo, but the fury of those who guard the world's balance. When they see Harry flying away on the dragon's back, clutching a relic of dark magic, they see the prophecy of human greed fulfilled once more. In that moment, the philosophy of Gringotts reveals itself fully, that every act of theft against creation carries a price, and though the trio escapes, the flames beneath the marble halls remind readers that some debts can never truly be paid. Throughout the series, Rowling shows that true magic depends on understanding the nature of things. Dumbledore tells Harry in The Half-Blood Prince, "It is our choices that show what we truly are." The goblins would have said it differently. It is our respect for what we did not create that defines us. Gringotts stands as the embodiment of that belief, hidden in plain sight behind counters and gold. The wizards see it as a bank because they cannot imagine magic that exists without transaction, but the readers, those who follow the clues, see it as a mirror, reflecting the human tendency to claim what is not ours and the ancient warning that power without reverence leads only to ruin. It is no wonder that Rowling never allows the goblins to fade into simple caricature. Griphook's sharpness, his distrust, his cold pride, all are justified when seen through the lens of their philosophy. In his eyes, wizards are not noble heroes, but careless thieves of meaning. The entire saga, so often framed as a battle between good and evil, contains within it this smaller, quieter conflict between creation and consumption, between those who craft and those who claim. Perhaps that is the greatest secret of Gringotts. Beneath its marble floors and roaring dragons lies not only the treasure of wizards, but the conscience of magic itself. The goblins guard it not from thieves of gold, but from thieves of understanding. And when Harry breaks their sacred rules to fight a greater darkness, the irony is that he must commit the same sin humanity always has, to take what is not his, in the hope of saving what cannot truly be owned. In that paradox lies the silent brilliance of Rowling's world. Gringotts, the so-called bank, is a reminder that every spell, every sword, every cup has a spirit, and that magic, like creation, belongs not to those who wield it, but to those who understand its cost. Number 20, the invisible presence of Lily Potter. There is something haunting yet comforting about Lily Potter's presence in the Harry Potter series. Though her physical appearance is limited to fleeting flashbacks and brief memories, her spirit is everywhere, quiet, invisible, but profoundly powerful. Readers who go beyond the surface of the story, who read not just for events but for emotion and connection, begin to sense her in the smallest moments. In J.K. Rowling's world, love is not an abstract force. It leaves traces, sometimes magical, sometimes human. And Lily's love is the most enduring magic of all. Her sacrifice is not a single event that ended the night Voldemort attacked. It is a presence that shapes the path of her son and, in a way, the fate of the entire wizarding world. When Lily throws herself between Voldemort and her infant son, the scene lasts only seconds in the books. Yet that single act creates a shield stronger than any spell in existence. Dumbledore later explains that it was old magic, blood magic, born from pure love. But what makes this act so remarkable is not only its immediate effect, Harry's survival, but its lingering echo. This love continues to protect him long after that night in Godric's Hollow. The protection runs through every fibre of Harry's story, surfacing at unexpected times. "Your mother died to save you," Dumbledore tells him, "and if there's one thing Voldemort can't understand, it's love." Lily's power is thus established as something Voldemort's darkness can never defeat, a spell without a wand, an enchantment woven into the soul. The physical mark of her love is, of course, the lightning scar, the wound left by Voldemort's curse. But there is another mark, quieter and far more profound, Harry's green eyes. "You have your mother's eyes," almost every character tells him, and it becomes more than a cliché. Those words are not just an observation about appearance, they are a constant reminder that Lily still watches through him. In crucial moments, this connection to her humanity steadies him. When he feels anger, despair, or the temptation to lash out, emotions inherited from James or provoked by the cruelty of others, Lily's eyes become the symbol of restraint. Empathy and love. It is no accident that Snape's dying words are, "Look at me." In that instant he sees Lily again, and through her eyes he dies at peace. Readers who know the books well can feel Lily's presence most keenly in those moments of moral decision, where Harry's choices reflect hers. When he protects others at the expense of his own safety, he is, consciously or not, repeating her act of sacrifice. At the end of the Philosopher's Stone, when he places himself between Voldemort and the stone, his bravery echoes hers. He is still a child, but the seed of selflessness is already within him. The love that once saved him becomes the love he offers to others. In the Chamber of Secrets, when he risks his life to save Ginny Weasley, he once again steps into the role of protector, not hero. Like Lily, he does not calculate the danger or seek glory. He simply acts because someone else needs saving. The emotional depth of Lily's influence extends even further. Her skills in potion-making and protective spells are often overlooked by casual readers, yet they shape Harry's personality more than one might think. Lily was known to be talented at potions, a skill that links her, ironically, to Severus Snape. This shared gift becomes one of the invisible threads that bind Harry to his mother's past. Though he struggles with potions under Snape's harsh guidance, the subject itself represents a piece of her legacy. Snape's bitterness, his cruelty toward Harry, comes from his inability to separate the boy from the woman he loved and lost. The fact that Harry carries her eyes only deepens that wound, making Lily's unseen presence a haunting force in Snape's life as well. When Dumbledore arranges for Harry to live with the Dursleys, he does it not out of cruelty but to preserve Lily's ancient protection. The blood bond between Petunia and Lily creates a sanctuary for Harry, however miserable it feels. While you can still call home the place where your mother's blood dwells, there you cannot be touched, Dumbledore explains. This choice intertwines Lily's love with every hardship Harry endures at Privet Drive. Even the cupboard under the stairs, dark and humiliating, becomes an extension of her magic. Her sacrifice ensures that Voldemort's evil cannot reach him there. The irony is sharp. The same love that saves him also traps him in an unloving environment. Yet through that quiet endurance, Harry learns patience, resilience, and the difference between power and kindness, lessons that reflect Lily's nature more than James's daring. In The Prisoner of Azkaban, Lily's presence deepens again through Harry's encounter with the Dementors. These creatures feed on happiness, but what they truly bring out in him is the echo of his mother's last scream. Each time a Dementor approaches, he hears her voice crying, "Not Harry! Please not Harry!" It is the sound of her final moments, preserved in the depths of his memory. This detail reveals that her love, though it shielded him, also left a scar on his spirit, the unbearable knowledge of being loved enough for someone to die for him. When he later conjures his Patronus, it takes the form of a stag, like his father's Animagus. But its purpose, to protect others from darkness, is distinctly Lily's. It is the fusion of both parents' legacies, courage from James, compassion from Lily. By the Goblet of Fire, Lily's influence becomes spiritual as much as emotional. When Voldemort regains a body, the priori incantatem effect during their duel in the graveyard brings forth the shadows of his victims. Lily appears described as the last to emerge and speaks gently, "When the connection is broken, we will linger for only moments, but we will give you time." She and James stand beside him, shielding him once again. This moment is not just magical, but profoundly symbolic. Death cannot erase her role. Even as an echo, she remains the protector. The fact that she speaks last is deliberate. Her presence completes the circle that began in Godric's Hollow. In the Order of the Phoenix, Harry's anger at Dumbledore and the world begins to threaten the innocence his mother died to preserve. Yet through the mirror Sirius gives him, a link to loved ones, Lily's memory lingers as a reminder of what real strength looks like. It is not found in rebellion or vengeance, but in understanding. When he learns from Snape's memory that his father was arrogant and bullying in youth, it is Lily's voice in the memory that strikes deepest. "You think you're funny, but you're just like him," she says to James. This glimpse of her moral clarity reframes Harry's identity. He realizes that he is not doomed to repeat his father's flaws because he also carries his mother's conscience. Her presence reaches its most poignant form in the Deathly Hallows when Harry walks into the Forbidden Forest to face death. The Resurrection Stone brings her back, not as a ghost, but as a vision of comfort. "You've been so brave," she tells him, her voice filled with love. He asks if dying hurts, and she answers softly, "Dying? Not at all. Quicker and easier than falling asleep." This scene mirrors her own death in a haunting symmetry. Just as Lily faced Voldemort to save her child, Harry now faces him to save others. In that moment, he completes her sacrifice. The circle of love and death closes, and her invisible hand guides him toward acceptance, not fear. Even after he survives, Lily's influence defines the way Harry chooses to live. He spares Draco, shows mercy to Wormtail, and refuses to use the Elder Wand for dominance. These decisions are not strategic. They are moral. They stem from the empathy he learned from his mother's example. The protective magic she embodied becomes a way of living, not fighting evil with evil, but transforming it through love. Dumbledore's final revelation, that Harry's willingness to die for others created a new shield over everyone at Hogwarts, is the ultimate proof. Lily's love is reborn in him. What began as a mother's desperate act becomes a universal force. The idea that Lily was a strong witch skilled in potion-making and protective charms is not simply background information, it is narrative architecture. It explains why Harry's magic often manifests as defense rather than attack. He is the boy who blocks curses, not one who casts them first. His strongest spell, the Patronus, is entirely defensive. His ability to love deeply, even those who hurt him, mirrors Lily's compassion toward Snape, toward even Petunia. Through him, her spirit continues to perform its quiet magic, mending where others would destroy. To those who watch only the films, Lily seems distant, a shadow defined by tragedy. But readers of the books can feel her in every heartbeat of the story, in the warmth that protects Harry from the Dementors, in the green eyes that remind everyone of her, in the moral strength that keeps him human amid horror. She is not just his mother, she is the story's invisible heart. From the cradle to the battlefield, from the cupboard under the stairs to the forbidden forest, her presence endures. Every act of courage Harry performs is an echo of hers, every moment of mercy a whisper of her love. And so, even though Lily Potter dies on page 1, she never truly leaves the book. She lives quietly, invisibly, in every spell her son casts and in every life he saves. Number 21. The Easter Egg of the Book of Life. In Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, there is a quiet moment that slips by unnoticed for most viewers, a brief scene that hides one of the cleverest Easter eggs in the entire film series. As Harry walks through the dimly lit Hogwarts library, the camera glides past a row of dusty shelves. He reaches out, his fingers brushing over old leather-bound tomes, until one thick black book catches the light. Its spine reads, "Magic Most Evil." The moment lasts barely a second, a blink amid the tension of the unfolding mystery. Most audiences never register it, yet for readers who later devoured Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, this fleeting shot would take on a startling new meaning. The book Magic Most Evil is not an invention of the filmmakers. It is a direct reference to J.K. Rowling's text. In The Half-Blood Prince, Hermione Granger mentions reading from this very same volume when she tries to understand the nature of Horcruxes. "I've been reading about them in Magic Most Evil," she tells Harry and Ron. "It's a horrible book, full of the foulest spells." From this line alone, the book takes on enormous importance in the mythology of dark magic. It is essentially the Book of Life and Death in Rowling's universe, a compendium of the forbidden, a record of the darkest rituals known to wizards. What makes the inclusion of this book in Chamber of Secrets so fascinating is the timeline. The film was released in 2002. Rowling would not publish the Half-Blood Prince until 2005, 3 years later. In other words, the filmmakers had no textual reference yet, unless they were working with knowledge from Rowling herself. The visual hint of magic most evil becomes a coded whisper, a foreshadowing of the grander mythos still to come. This suggests a secret collaboration between author and filmmakers, where pieces of the future were quietly planted in the past for the sharpest eyes to find. In the logic of Rowling's world, no object appears without meaning. The diary of Tom Riddle, discovered by Harry in the same sequence, is not merely a relic of the past, it is the first Horcrux, the first fragment of Voldemort's divided soul to surface in the story. But back in 2002, no viewer could have guessed that. The very word Horcrux had not yet entered the Harry Potter vocabulary. And yet sitting beside that diary on the shelf was a book describing precisely that kind of dark magic. The connection feels deliberate, even prophetic. It is as though the diary itself was silently calling to the book that explains its nature. Cinematically, the placement is elegant. The Hogwarts library scene in Chamber of Secrets is drenched in candlelight and shadow. The shelves stretch upward into darkness, filled with books that seem alive with whispers. When Harry searches through them, the audience senses the forbidden nature of this knowledge. These are the secrets even Dumbledore rarely speaks of. And right there, in the soft flicker of light, sits magic most evil. The title gleams for half a breath before the camera cuts away. It is a blink and you miss it moment, yet symbolically it bridges two major mysteries, the diary in Chamber of Secrets and the Horcruxes in the Half-Blood Prince. Readers will recall Hermione's horror when she explains the contents of that same book years later. The soul is supposed to remain intact and whole, she quotes. Splitting it is an act of violation, of supreme evil. That sentence, buried within magic most evil, forms the moral foundation for Voldemort's downfall. It defines the cost of immortality, the corruption of one's very essence. For a single frame of that book to appear beside the diary, years before, this revelation demonstrates a storytelling sophistication few fantasy films achieve. It is also worth remembering how Rowling often layered meaning through physical objects. The invisibility cloak, the time turner, even the locket, all of them first appear long before their true importance is revealed. The diary follows that same tradition. In Chamber of Secrets it seems a mystery of memory and possession, a clever plot device for haunting. But through the presence of magic most evil, the film subtly tells us it is something far darker. The diary is not just a record, it is a living fragment, an embodiment of that forbidden art detailed in the shadow pages of the book sitting nearby. This small Easter egg also deepens our understanding of how knowledge operates in the wizarding world. Books in Hogwarts are not passive containers of information. They radiate presence, power, and sometimes danger. Hermione once said, "You could get expelled for reading some of these books." In that sense, magic most evil functions as both a warning and a key. It guards the secrets of the soul, accessible only to those reckless or desperate enough to seek them. The filmmakers, by showing it near the diary, visualize that temptation toward the allure of knowing what should never be known. There is also a poetic irony in the fact that Harry, the boy who carries part of Voldemort's soul unknowingly within himself, passes by the very book that could have explained his condition. He does not stop to read it, he moves on. The knowledge that might have changed everything is literally within arm's reach, and yet fate keeps him ignorant. It is a moment that captures one of Rowling's recurring themes, that ignorance can be both mercy and doom. For fans who revisit Chamber of Secrets after finishing the series, the shot now feels almost eerie. That book on the shelf becomes a ghost of the future, whispering hints of tragedies yet to come. It foreshadows Dumbledore's obsession with understanding Horcruxes, the destruction of the locket and the ring, and even the ultimate revelation that Harry himself is one. In a sense, the filmmakers built a visual prophecy into the frame, visible only to those who had completed the journey. The craftsmanship behind this detail speaks to the close relationship between Rowling and the production team. Screenwriter Steve Kloves, known for his attention to subtext, may have been privy to Rowling's long-term outline. Rowling herself once admitted that she had shared crucial plot elements with the filmmakers to preserve continuity. The inclusion of Magic Most Evil could easily have been one of those deliberate hints, a visual seed waiting to bloom years later. Symbolically, Magic Most Evil also embodies the duality that defines the entire saga. It represents knowledge and corruption, curiosity and consequence. Hermione seeks it for understanding, Voldemort for domination. Both open its pages, but only one loses her soul in the process. This contrast mirrors the broader tension between light and dark magic, not as absolute forces, but as choices driven by intent. When Harry's fingers glide past the book without opening it, it is as if he unconsciously refuses the temptation that doomed Tom Riddle years before. Even the book's archaic spelling, Magic Most Evil, suggests a connection to ancient, pre-modern sorcery, the kind of primal magic that predates Hogwarts itself. It echoes the alchemical grimoires of old Europe, where knowledge was power and power was peril. The fact that such a relic rests quietly in the Hogwarts library, unguarded yet unstudied, reinforces the idea that evil often hides in plain sight. This single prop tells a story within the story. The diary and the book share a visual kinship. Both are black, both contain words that breathe with their own will, and both promise revelation at a terrible cost. In that sense, the diary is an offspring of Magic Most Evil, a creation born from the knowledge it preserves. The filmmakers may have recognized this parallel and staged the shot as an act of cinematic symmetry. The Book of Dark Theory and the Object of Dark Practice share the same frame for one brief, fateful instant. Years later, when audiences watch The Half-Blood Prince and hear Hermione utter the words Magic Most Evil, the memory of that fleeting library scene returns like a shiver. What once seemed decorative now feels prophetic. The series rewards attention, revealing how even the smallest visual detail can carry the weight of future revelation. It is a rare moment where film and literature converge perfectly, where a secret planted in one medium blooms in another. The artistry of this hidden connection lies not in spectacle but in restraint. The scene never announces itself. There is no zoom, no dramatic music cue, no line of dialogue drawing attention to the book. It exists quietly, waiting for years until attentive viewers recognize its significance. That is the essence of great storytelling, when meaning grows with time and what once looked ordinary becomes extraordinary under the light of hindsight. In that single frame, the entire moral architecture of the Harry Potter saga rests unspoken, the thin line between curiosity and obsession, the danger of knowledge divorced from empathy, the invisible thread connecting innocence and corruption. Magic Most Evil is not just a background detail, it is the symbolic heart of the mystery, the unacknowledged twin to Tom Riddle's diary, both born of the same dark hunger for immortality. Only those who have read the books, who have followed the path to its end, will recognize the gravity of what flickered on that shelf. The film, like Hogwarts itself, guards its secrets well, rewarding only those who dare to look twice. Number 22, Trelawney's Silent Prophecy. In the third book, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, Sybil Trelawney appears as a comical figure, eccentric to the point of parody. Her classroom smells of incense, her eyes are magnified behind thick glasses, and her predictions are so exaggerated that most students struggle not to laugh. Yet hidden beneath her clumsy mannerisms lies one of the most chilling and overlooked moments in the entire series, a moment that reveals she is far more than the caricature Hogwarts makes her out to be. Readers who look closely realize that amid her nonsense there comes a moment of genuine prophecy, and its meaning ripples through the entire saga. It happens near the end of the school year. Harry has just finished his divination exam, in which he humorously invents a death prediction about Buckbeak to satisfy Trelawney's expectations. He is about to leave the room, relieved that the ordeal is over, when the atmosphere suddenly changes. Rowling describes the shift vividly. Her voice was no longer her own. It was hoarse, harsh, and eerily distant, as though it were coming from somewhere deep within her. Harry freezes. The laughter fades. What comes next is not a theatrical prediction for attention. It is a real prophecy. The professor says, "The Dark Lord lies alone and friendless, abandoned by his followers. His servant has been chained these 12 years. Tonight, before midnight, the servant will break free and set out to rejoin his master." Then she collapses, unaware of what has just happened. This moment, brief and unsettling, is one of only 2 true prophecies Trelawney ever makes in the series. The first, revealed later in the Order of the Phoenix, concerned the boy who would have the power to vanquish the Dark Lord. The second, the one uttered here in Prisoner of Azkaban, foretells the return of Voldemort through the actions of his servant Peter Pettigrew. It is this prophecy that marks the turning point between Voldemort's exile and his eventual resurrection. Yet what is striking is how quietly Rowling hides this truth within a moment many casual readers might forget. Film audiences often miss the full significance because the movie version reduces the prophecy to a few seconds of cryptic speech. In the book, however, Rowling lingers just long enough for the reader to feel the gravity of the event. The tone of the writing changes, the humour vanishes. Even the room seems to hold its breath. It is as if something ancient and beyond human understanding has briefly taken over Trelawney's body. The scene reminds readers that divination, however mocked by rational wizards like Professor McGonagall, is not entirely foolish. Something real, something powerful, moves through it on rare occasions. What makes this scene fascinating is that Trelawney herself has no memory of what she said. When Harry mentions it later, she reacts with confusion. "I must have been talking in my sleep, dear," she insists, unaware that she has spoken words that change the future of the wizarding world. This oblivion is not just comic irony, it is deeply symbolic. Rowling uses Trelawney as an instrument of fate, a messenger who does not understand the message she delivers. Like the mythic prophets of old, she channels forces she cannot control. In retrospect, her prophecy unfolds with eerie precision. At the moment she speaks, Sirius Black has escaped Azkaban, and everyone believes he intends to kill Harry. In truth, the servant she refers to is not Sirius but Pettigrew, Wormtail, who has been living in disguise as Ron's pet rat, Scabbers. That very night, Pettigrew escapes from Lupin and Sirius, returning eventually to his master in the graveyard. By the next book, Goblet of Fire, Voldemort rises again. Trelawney's words are fulfilled word for word. The Dark Lord was friendless. The servant broke free and the path to rebirth was opened. The elegance of this prophecy lies in its quiet accuracy. There is no spectacle, no thunder or flash of magic. The truth enters the story like a whisper. Rowling's decision to hide it in plain sight speaks volumes about her narrative craft. Trelawney's second prophecy is a moment of divine irony, the real magic hidden within what everyone else considers nonsense. The students mock her, McGonagall dismisses her subject as guesswork, and even Dumbledore keeps her at Hogwarts more out of pity than belief. Yet in that single instant she becomes the voice of destiny. One might say that Rowling plants this moment as a test for the reader. Those who skim the surface will remember only a strange teacher with too many shawls, but attentive readers will recognize that this is the hinge between the past and the dark future to come. The prophecy marks the end of the safe years at Hogwarts, when Voldemort was only a ghost of memory. After this, the world begins to turn again toward darkness. Pettigrew's escape sets in motion the events that lead to the Triwizard Tournament, Cedric Diggory's death, and the Second Wizarding War. All of it begins in that incense-filled classroom with a woman speaking in a voice not her own. The emotional weight of the moment also reframes how we see Trelawney later in the series. When Umbridge tries to fire her in Order of the Phoenix, Dumbledore intervenes, saying quietly that she has his full confidence. Many readers take this as kindness, but it carries deeper meaning. Dumbledore knows that Trelawney is the source of the first prophecy, the one concerning Harry and Voldemort. She is, quite literally, the vessel of fate. He cannot let her leave Hogwarts because she must remain protected. She may seem absurd, but she is dangerous to those who seek to manipulate destiny. In a sense, Trelawney embodies one of Rowling's recurring themes, the underestimated figure who holds hidden power. Just as Neville Longbottom grows from a clumsy boy into a hero, Trelawney evolves from a comic nuisance into a key witness to fate. Rowling's universe often hides greatness beneath eccentricity. The true seer, it seems, must look foolish to those who believe only in logic. This mirrors the way Dumbledore himself treats knowledge, with humility, knowing that truth can come from the most unlikely sources. It is worth noting how Rowling structures the prophecy linguistically. The repetition of the servant will break free echoes biblical cadence, giving it a tone of revelation rather than prediction. Her language evokes fate as an independent force, something that flows through people rather than being shaped by them. Trelawney's unconscious state underscores this idea. She is merely a channel. When she awakes, her normal self returns, cluttered with tea leaves and false omens, as though the universe has briefly borrowed her voice and then left her empty. The scene also foreshadows the moral ambiguity that defines the later books. Trelawney's prophecy allows Pettigrew to escape, yet it also exposes the fragility of free will in the wizarding world. If fate decrees that Voldemort will return, can any action prevent it? Rowling invites readers to wrestle with this question without offering an answer. Dumbledore later tells Harry that it is our choices that show what we truly are, but the existence of these prophecies complicates that ideal. Trelawney's unconscious truth-telling shows that destiny operates alongside choice, not in opposition to it. For readers, discovering that this forgotten classroom moment is the second real prophecy changes the way we interpret the entire series. It reveals Rowling's mastery of long-term storytelling. The casual reader might see Prisoner of Azkaban as a standalone mystery about Sirius Black, but in reality it plants the seed for everything that follows. The prophecy connects directly to Voldemort's resurrection, and it reinforces the idea that even the most overlooked details matter in Rowling's world. Nothing is random. Even the eccentric divination teacher, mocked for predicting deaths that never come, carries the key to the Dark Lord's return. Perhaps the most haunting part is that Trelawney never knows the truth. She lives her life at Hogwarts, clutching her sherry bottle and muttering about omens, unaware that she once spoke with the voice of fate. This unawareness gives her tragedy. She is both prophet and fool, a woman burdened by a gift she does not understand. Her ignorance protects her sanity, but it also isolates her. The students' laughter, the staff's skepticism, all seem cruelly ironic when we realize she once spoke words that shaped history. In this way, Trelawney becomes a mirror for the reader's own blindness. How many truths, Rowling seems to ask, do we overlook because they come from unlikely mouths? In a story filled with wizards who believe knowledge is power, the true prophet is powerless. Her wisdom is accidental, her insight involuntary. Yet without her, the events of the later books would never unfold. The Dark Lord's resurrection, Harry's confrontation with destiny, even Dumbledore's long game, all trace back to that trembling voice in the divination tower. What distinguishes those who notice this detail is attention to the subtleties of Rowling's craft. The films flatten the prophecy into spectacle. The books preserve its eerie stillness. Readers who dwell on that quiet moment, Harry standing frozen, Trelawney's head tilted back, her words echoing like a wind through the future, understand that the story of Harry Potter is not just about courage or friendship. It is also about the mystery of fate speaking through the ridiculous, the divine hiding in the absurd. In that silence after her collapse, when Harry leaves the tower confused and unsettled, the prophecy begins its slow, inevitable work. The servant breaks free, the Dark Lord rises, and the woman who foretold it all returns to her crystal ball, none the wiser. Number 23, the letter from the cupboard under the stairs. In Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, the image of a boy living in a cupboard under the stairs became one of the most haunting and symbolic moments in modern literature. When readers first encounter Harry Potter, he is not a hero nor a chosen one, nor even a boy who knows who he is. He is simply Harry, who lived in the cupboard under the stairs, as J.K. Rowling writes in the very first chapter. This line, both simple and cruel, tells us everything we need to know about his life with the Dursleys. He is hidden, unwanted, and treated as something less than human. Yet the very first magical act directed toward him, the letter from Hogwarts, finds him there. That detail alone reveals the true magic of Rowling's world. It sees you even when no one else does. The Hogwarts letter is one of the most famous symbols in the series. On the surface, it is merely an invitation to a school of witchcraft and wizardry. But for Harry, it is much more. It is proof of existence. For 10 years, the Dursleys had tried to erase any trace of his identity. Vernon Dursley barked at him to stay out of sight. Petunia pretended he didn't exist. Even Dudley treated him as a servant. And then one day a letter arrived addressed to Mr. H. Potter, the cupboard under the stairs. It was as if the universe itself whispered, "We see you, Harry. You matter." No human eye could have witnessed his secret misery as clearly as the one that wrote that address. What makes this moment even more powerful is the precision of the magic involved. Rowling mentions in several places that owls always know exactly where to deliver wizard mail. No matter where he was, the letters would follow him, she writes. That's why when Vernon tries to move Harry from the cupboard to the smallest bedroom, the address on the next envelope immediately changes to reflect his new location. Mr. H. Potter, the smallest bedroom, 4 Privet Drive. This isn't just a funny running gag. It's a statement about the nature of magic in Rowling's world. It doesn't just function as a tool or weapon, it carries awareness, intention, and care. The magic of Hogwarts doesn't overlook anyone, not even a child locked in a cupboard. In the film adaptation, the scene is presented humorously, almost as slapstick, dozens of letters flying through the air, Vernon trying to block them, Petunia screaming, Harry jumping with joy. But if you've read the book, the moment holds a different weight. Each of those letters is a small act of rebellion against cruelty. They are physical reminders that no matter how tightly the Dursleys close their doors, the magical world will break through. When Rowling describes the letters pouring through the fireplace like a golden rain, it feels like divine justice. Magic, in this case, doesn't just entertain, it defends. This sensitivity of the magical system to Harry's situation suggests something about the moral structure of the wizarding world. Hogwarts, as an institution, is not perfect. It has flaws, dangers, and politics. Yet from the very beginning, it demonstrates a kind of compassion that the human world around Harry lacks. The fact that the letter is addressed precisely to his cupboard shows that someone or something within that magical system cares enough to notice, whether it's the magic of the castle itself, the Ministry's registration system, or Dumbledore's quiet oversight. We are reminded that Harry was never truly invisible. Dumbledore's influence is, of course, one of the great unspoken presences in that scene. Readers who revisit the series later understand that Dumbledore knew exactly where and how Harry was living. He placed him with the Dursleys, invoking the magical protection tied to his mother's blood. But that doesn't mean he was indifferent to the boy's suffering. The letter from Hogwarts, arriving so specifically addressed, may have been the first compassionate gesture from Dumbledore's world to Harry's. It is as though the wizarding world itself reaches out a hand to the child it left behind, saying, "We haven't forgotten you." It's also worth noting that this kind of magical precision contrasts with how impersonal most bureaucracies are. The Dursleys represent the cold normality of a world that follows appearances and rules. They refuse to see Harry as anything but a burden. The Ministry of Magic, later in the series, will also be portrayed as rigid and blind. But Hogwarts, through its letters, feels personal and intuitive. The letter doesn't just say Mr. Potter, 4 Privet Drive. It adds the tiny, painful truth, the cupboard under the stairs. It acknowledges the hidden suffering, the detail no one else dares to speak aloud. That kind of acknowledgement can change a life. When Harry opens his first letter, it is not only an invitation to a school, it is the moment when he realizes that someone knows who he is, where he is, and what he endures. The act of being seen is transformative. In psychological terms, it is the first step from neglect toward identity. He stared at the envelope, his heart hammering. Rowling writes, no one ever had written to him before. That single sentence breaks the reader's heart more than any spell or battle later in the series. Magic doesn't begin with a wand, it begins with recognition. There's also a subtle theological echo here. In many mythologies, divine beings notice the unnoticed, the poor, the outcast, the orphan. Harry fits perfectly into that archetype. The letter functions almost like a call from destiny. It finds him in the darkness of his cupboard, offering him not wealth or revenge, but belonging. The cupboard is his tomb, and the letter is his resurrection. The scene mirrors the ancient pattern of the chosen hero who rises from obscurity once the world finally speaks his name. Readers often forget how shocking this detail is for the Dursleys themselves. Vernon's face turns purple when he sees the address. The letter exposes the secret they've tried to bury for 10 years, that Harry's existence cannot be erased. It's no coincidence that Vernon's immediate response is to destroy the letters and flee. The letters symbolize truth, and the Dursleys represent denial. When the letters keep coming through the door, the windows, the fireplace, it's as if the truth itself is breaking into their house, refusing to be silenced. The cupboard under the stairs becomes the epicenter of a small domestic rebellion between cruelty and compassion. If we look closely, Rowling uses the letter to establish the moral axis of the entire series. The Dursleys' world is one of concealment. They hide Harry, they hide the truth, they hide anything abnormal. The magical world, however, is one of revelation. It brings what is hidden into light. He had never even imagined such a strange, beautiful world, the narration tells us when Harry finally enters Diagon Alley. But that moment of discovery begins with the letter. Without the letter recognizing him in the cupboard, there would be no journey, no awakening, no story at all. There's another layer to this small but profound detail. The cupboard is a symbol of fear, silence and repression. It's where Harry hides from punishment, from the noise of Dudley's tantrums, from the life he can't escape. But once the letter arrives there, the space is transformed. It becomes sacred, a place where magic first touched his life. In a strange way, the cupboard under the stairs becomes the birthplace of the wizarding world's new hope. It's as if the most forgotten corner of a suburban house becomes the cradle of destiny. That is why this minor visual detail, the address on the envelope, resonates so deeply with readers who pay attention. It is Rowling's quietest message about empathy. Magic in her world does not only reward bravery or intelligence, it notices suffering. It recognizes the lonely and gives them a name. Later in the series, when Dumbledore tells Harry, "You are protected by love," we can trace that protection back to this very first letter. The letter doesn't save Harry from abuse, but it gives him the knowledge that he belongs somewhere else, somewhere kinder. The scene also reflects Rowling's own literary craft. She often hides major emotional truths inside small, visual details. The letter's address foreshadows the entire arc of the series, from invisibility to recognition, from isolation to acceptance. When the books end, and Harry names his son Albus Severus Potter, he stands as a man who once lived in a cupboard, now raising a child in freedom. The transformation is complete, but it began with that one sentence, written in green ink. For many readers, the moment the first letter appears is when they fell in love with the story. It is the instant when the impossible enters the ordinary. The detail of the cupboard on the envelope might seem small, but it encapsulates the entire emotional core of Harry Potter. It reminds us that magic is not about power, it's about acknowledgement. In a world that often ignores pain, to be seen is the first act of salvation. And somewhere between the ink on the parchment and the flutter of owl wings, a boy who had been forgotten by everyone realized that he was, after all, expected. Number 24, Hermione's invisible help. When Hermione Granger was discovered petrified in the corridors of Hogwarts, her frozen form represented far more than another victim of the monster lurking within the Chamber of Secrets. It was a silent message, a clue left by a mind that refused to stop thinking even in the face of mortal danger. In the film Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, this moment passes quickly. Hermione lies still in the hospital wing, her hand resting stiffly at her side. The focus is on the horror of her condition. But in J.K. Rowling's original book, there is an extraordinary layer of detail that the movie never shows. The book tells us that Hermione was found clutching a small mirror in her hand, a mirror that held the key to solving the mystery of the creature attacking students. That single, easily overlooked object becomes a testament to Hermione's intellect, her intuition, and her courage. In Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets after the attack, Professor McGonagall gathers the terrified students and announces the tragedy. Later, when Harry and Ron visit the hospital wing, they notice the petrified Hermione lying still as marble. It's then that they find something that changes everything, a crumpled piece of paper torn from a library book. On it, Hermione had scribbled the word pipes, and alongside it was the explanation of the basilisk. Rowling writes, "It moves through the pipes, killing with its stare. Spiders flee before it." But even more strikingly, the professors also found a mirror in Hermione's stiff hand. It was not simply there by accident. It was the tool she had used to see the monster without looking directly at it. This detail, so crucial in the novel, is absent in the film adaptation. On screen, Hermione's petrification seems to occur without context. She's merely another casualty. The movie shows the attack as part of a montage where the audience sees her reflection in a mirror before she's struck, but it never pauses to explain her reasoning. Without the book's insight, viewers miss how Hermione, with her characteristic brilliance, deduced the creature's nature long before anyone else. The mirror becomes the symbol of her invisible assistance, the proof that even when she could no longer speak, she had already saved her friends by leaving behind the evidence they needed to understand the mystery. The idea that Hermione anticipated the danger of the basilisk and devised a way to protect herself fits perfectly with her character. She was, after all, the only Muggle-born student who could rival pure-blood wizards in knowledge. Her curiosity and intellect were her weapons. When the clues began to mount, the voices Harry heard through the walls, the terrified look on Mrs. Norris's petrified face, the spiders fleeing the castle, Hermione connected them faster than anyone else. She went to the library, researched serpentine creatures, and found the entry about the basilisk. Rowling describes it clearly. The basilisk, known also as the King of Serpents, kills anyone who looks directly into its eyes. That line changed everything for her. She must have realized that indirect reflection, a mirror, water, or a camera lens, could spare one's life. The mirror, then, was not a random object. It was her shield, her last desperate precaution. She knew she was walking into danger, yet she still acted, determined to confirm her theory. The tragedy was that the reflection protected her from death, but not from petrification. When she crossed paths with the basilisk, she saw it indirectly through the mirror, and thus survived, though frozen. This moment reveals Hermione's essence. Intelligence mixed with bravery, the ability to think logically in the face of terror. In that instant, she became not only a victim but also the savior who left behind the key to defeating the monster. Harry and Ron, when they later study the clues, essentially continue Hermione's investigation. They use her note, her mirror, her research, everything she managed to assemble before being attacked. In that sense, Hermione remains the mind behind the victory, even though she's absent from the action. Dumbledore later acknowledges that fact indirectly when he praises their teamwork. But the book makes it clear that the real breakthrough came from Hermione's deduction. She had not only solved the riddle, but also ensured that the truth would reach her friends, even if she couldn't tell them herself. The symbolism of the mirror itself is profound. In folklore and mythology, mirrors are instruments of revelation and protection. They expose hidden truths, reflect danger, and ward off evil. In Hermione's hands, the mirror serves exactly that purpose. It reflects the monstrous gaze of the basilisk back onto itself, deflecting death. It also reflects Hermione's character, always analytical, always cautious, always prepared. The film's decision to omit this object strips the scene of a crucial layer of meaning. Without the mirror, Hermione's petrification seems accidental. With it, It becomes an act of sacrifice and genius. It's easy to miss how much Rowling's Hermione contributes to the plot, even when she's not present. Throughout the series, she often provides the intellectual backbone of every adventure. In Philosopher's Stone, it was her logic that allowed the trio to pass Snape's potion riddle. In Prisoner of Azkaban, it was her mastery of time-turner magic that made saving Sirius Black possible. In Chamber of Secrets, her invisible help through the mirror and the library note shows that her mind continues to operate beyond her physical limits. She saves the day without even being conscious.